We have two quite different topics. One is about a mind-blowing fossil insect, and the other is about two people named Flannery and Darwin. That's not a comedy duo. We'll get to them in a moment. But first of all, we have a story about a fossil insect. It was actually a fossil katydid. Now, for people who are not familiar with this, it's a fossil that's a bit like or an insect that's a bit like a grasshopper. There are plenty of them still living. But this was found in the Green River Formation, which is a very famous fossil formation, and both John and Joseph have been there. So we'll have a look at some real examples from there, and it's dated as being around 50 million years old. And the important thing about this particular fossil is that the internal organs were very, very clearly preserved. This was very, very well preserved, and you could see the thoracic muscles. You could see its intestines. You could see a part of its digestive system called a ventriculus. And most intriguingly, in the opinions of one of the scientists who studied it, was that you could see its testes and accessory glands. So incredibly good preservation. So much so that one of the scientists who worked on this made this comment, that the testis, the accessory glands, and the ventriculus were all the same as in present day katydids. Now note that. I was just blown away by it. To my knowledge, this is the first example of this level of preservation. Well, that's interesting that he should say that, because people who have been exploring the Green River for a while have noticed this for quite a long time. It's not new. But let's go back to being blown away that it was the same as present day katydids. Well, that's not a problem for us. We're not blown away that its internal structures were the same as present day katydids, because we have been told very clearly in Genesis 1 that insects, all animals, all living things were made according to their kinds, and they have reproduced after their kinds ever since. So what he is expressing, what this scientist is expressing now, is simply, well, here's the evidence. But they insist that what they've found is evidence for evolution, when it in fact is the opposite. So you can stand your ground on what the Bible says. And every now and again, or quite often actually, the scientists just admit this, even though they don't understand what they're admitting. So don't be afraid to stand your ground on the scriptures. The evidence fits it. Now, the other issue, of course, is that how did it get to be so well preserved? Now, the usual story by uniformitarian geologists is this little summary, which was in the press release from the University of Illinois and was then reproduced in a number of science news sources. And we give you the links to these if you want to go back and check them out. And this is the story they told. 50 million years ago, in what is now a northwestern Colorado, a katydid died, sank to the bottom of the lake, and was quickly buried in fine sediment, where it remained until its compressed fossil was recovered in recent years. Now, if you ask any pool owner what happens to dead insects that might get blown into their pool, well, dead insects actually float on water. So I'm not quite sure that story really fits. And also, if we go and look at this particular formation, it's a very, very famous fossil formation. And one of the distinctive things about it is that it has many, many fine layers. And if we just come back to us, John and Joseph has got some lovely fossils that illustrate how silly that story is about fossil insects, and also about the Green River. So let's have a look at those if we can come back to us now.
Okay, let me go first, and I'll hand back to Joe. Introducing this, you can all see our fossil fish. Now, this is what the Green River Formation is most known for, and Joe will take that up in a little while. Now, many of the fossils are touched up. This has been superficially painted over because many of the fossils seem to have lost their color if they're near the surface. Joe will show you the edge of his a bit later, which is a much thicker slice, but this comes from the 18-inch band. Now, when I say 18-inch band, half a meter if you're in metric countries, but it's full of layers, 40,000, I believe. And so the argument is it takes you one year to get 2 bands, dark light, etc. And so this represents a vast amount of time, but it's full of these fishes, some small, some large. And this, by the way, is a member of the herring family. Herrings are still here. So like katydids, herrings don't either. They just continue to produce their own kind. They don't evolve. But Diane's article is more about things like this. See the insect? Now, I was asked one year, could we supply a guy who was a lecturer in insectology, I don't know what the correct word is, with fossil insects, and he wanted all varieties. And so we did manage to get them for him. And that's what you find is amazing. The level, that's about as close as I can get to keep it in focus there. The level of preservation, and these are not touched up, by the way. That's exactly how you find them, because there are commercial quarries there where you can go in and dig up your own, right? There's millions of them, yes, really per square kilometre. Insects, fishes, plants, you name it. And the preservation, I know the article says this is the first time he's heard of it. Well, that just means he hasn't been listening too carefully. We have fossils like that from all over the planet, of all ages. And if you think that it's actually 50 million years old at the Green River, then what you have to objectively say is for 50 million years, katydids haven't evolved. I mean, 50 million years of not evolving is good evidence it's not ever going to. 50 million years, herrings turning into herrings. In fact, Joe, would you take up this and show them your fish? Now, I'll credit you. Your fish is bigger than my fish. So take it away.
Yeah, well, this is a well, it was formerly known as Priscacara, but it's now known as something else like Coccorellites, I believe, which is this beautiful fish from the Green River Formation here. And this is in its natural state. It hasn't been painted up, it hasn't been trimmed up. It is a high quality fish. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch across to our other camera here and see, Sam, I'll let you switch that across if that's okay. There's the skull, lovely. Right, let's bring it over here because we've actually set up 2 cameras, and by the way, we're trying out some different ideas with the camera setups now, so that we can bring close-up shots and different close-up shots of different fossils. We'll be talking about that one later. But there's the fossil fish just there, as you can see it. Now, the reason why we wanted to bring this is because actually we're interested in this. Well, it's quite a large, thick slice here. So let's bend it up like that, and hey, can you see all of the valves? The different layers that you can see there. Let's see if we can zoom in even closer to get a really, really good shot here. So there you go, John. There's all the layers.
Can you show us a bit with those brown blobs in and talk about them?
That's what I'm going to do. So we're moving across. Oh, there's a brown blob there. And if we keep going along, you can see there's actually a fish still inside the layers just here. You can see how it kind of goes along like that. But we've got these brown kind of blobs in here. There's some around here. Let's go to this side. There we go. There's one just there. You see all the layers and you see the blobs and how it's 3D. It's definitely sitting in there because can you see how all the layers are kind of moving around it?
In fact, Joe, isn't that petrified poo?
It is indeed. Absolutely.
So, Joe, I'd like to add, my wife and I have been there. We've been to the quarries, and that's what you look for. You pull off a slab and you look for these dark layers there, and that's where you split the rock to find your fish. And we found over 100, all the smaller ones, like John was showing, the herrings, all perfectly preserved.
Some more there, look.
So what's the significance of finding fossil poo? It's really important.
Well, Firstly, if you've ever seen any kind of fish poo, it kind of comes out and, well, it kind of dissipates quite quickly. It doesn't kind of hang around and sink to the bottom. But anything that does make it to the bottom just decomposes very, very quickly. If you're actually going to get fecal matter actually caught up into the rock layers and buried, particularly if you're going to get a fish buried in the same kind of area, you're going to need a very quick and rapid burial indeed. We're not talking about slow, gradual burial. The idea of the valve is that it's one valve per season, which is 2 valves a year, which, well, you see just how many layers and layers there are there. There's many, 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 many. We're talking vast ages just in this little slab here. So really, there's no indication of slow, gradual, oxygenless environment. We're talking about a fast burial of all of these creatures and the poo and everything else inside of it for sure.